Well, look, Warren, let's just take it simply first with words. Let's just do it that way, and then we can go to language, because language is a complex system which involves word, gesture, and all of that sort of thing, and it's a higher abstraction than words. Now, the point is that words are not something which, in themselves, are anything but logos instead of logos. Words are things which just happen to be in your head instead of someone else's head, just like memories are various other pieces of furniture in this room that this Martian has to put the clues in. Now, language is a more complicated thing, but at the same time it is a structure. It hasn't yet been scientifically described, and it's doubtful if any two people have the same language. At least I'm now speaking as a professional linguist and not as a poet. And it seems to me that it simply is another layer of stuff that the Martians have to penetrate and have to work with. Please don't get me wrong. Martian is just a word for X. I am not saying that the little green men are coming in saucers and going into my bedroom and helping me write poetry. They ain't. But I think that it's just a higher level of abstraction than the one that Duncan uses, and is less useful because Duncan's at least includes Pound's way of getting to this thing, where Pound simply uses history in its ultimate sense, not history the way it was in that discussion we heard, but history in the sense of everything connecting to everything else. And when Duncan talks about words, he does it the same way, that you follow back a word and so forth. But you can follow back a word to its source. You can't, unfortunately. But even assuming you could, you'd get something which was some nice furniture to work with, but no more than furniture, and as history is. The second book of this thing, the fake novel about the life of Arthur Rimbaud, is essentially about history, which said Duncan instead of Dante, goodness, which Dante's Purgatorio is also essentially about. And the business of history is an important thing, but essentially it's furniture.
That's what I still don't understand that.
Well,
what you said before.
Well, I just think essentially that it's an accident that I have this history in my skull instead of some other history, which is absolutely alien to me, but wouldn't the poem could be written through just as easily. And if I were an Uzbek poet of the 9th century, I would have a history which would be just as usable in poetry and everything else, and knew that an Uzbek word went back to the Tocharian, which came from Indo-European invaders and all of that. It really wouldn't matter terribly too much. It's just one of those things. They aren't the words, they're counters, and the whole structure of language is essentially a counter. It's an obstruction to what the poem wants to do, and the more you understand about the words and understand about the structure of language, the easier it is for you to see where the obstructions are and prevent them, if possible, from interfering with the message of the poem. But that's about all I think you can do with it. And you have someone like Eliot who's been who was really just hung up by this and wasn't able to write any poetry after The Wasteland on account of it, because he thought he didn't know enough history, and gotten a few historical things, and so he thought, well, gee, I better write plays because I don't know enough about what my muse is, and yet it isn't really. I don't know. It's obviously all these things are important for human beings, and since I'm a human being, some of my best friends are too. But I don't think that ultimately that's as important as just cleaning things up so that the invaders, the things which are parasitical on you and create poems can come in.
Well, let me push this just a little bit further. For instance, amongst this word furniture, you have a kind of quote, wicked wit just in the word, just, you know, knocking around in the furniture.
Mm-hmm.
Does this interfere with the messages? Like, do you want to...
Well, I'm always suspicious when my wit comes in,
yeah.
And it's that's the places where I pause the longest, and undoubtedly sometimes it does. I don't think it did in the Logos thing, although, as I say, that was one of the places where I paused the longest. But I certainly do, and whenever it sounds like a nice thing I would say in a conversation, even a serious conversation, using the wit, I tend to, you know, you're talking about a glass, and you have an inkwell, and the two things have in common that they can be filled with a liquid, and and there's a kind of a incongruity about it, because you would never drink out of an inkwell, and you never dip your pen into a glass, and if you put an inkwell and a glass and fill them both up with something, you show in some ways how things are related, even though they don't seem to be. And this is the kind of thing which the pun in that sense does. It gives interconnections between things which do have interconnections, but you don't really know about them until you've had them given to you that way, and generally in an absurd way. And I think that the pun has to do not only with the magic of words, which we still have as relatives of the ape, but also has to do with our recognition that things are like other things, and words can sound alike, and it can be something which brings you closer to the nature of reality, as well as being quite funny. I mean, let's take a typical pun. The guy who jumps off the 20-story window, and the guy in the 15th story looks at him and yells, "Have you got vertigo?" And the guy who's falling yells back, "No, only about 14 more stories." Well, now, this is incongruous. It causes great pain and everything else. But it connects the two kinds of things. The observer from the window who wondered why the guy fell out of the window, and also the guy falling out of the window. They're both part of an existential moment, and vertigo and fartigo bring them together somehow. And it has something to do with the experience of witnessing death.